Cooper Rush is taking the league by storm, but is this the best backup quarterback performance we have ever seen? Well, let's break it down using stats. 66.7. 66 what, you might ask? Well, 66.7 is Cooper Rush's adjusted quarterback rating, and this doesn't seem like much until you realize that he is ahead of players like Justin Herbert, Lamar Jackson, Jalen Hurts, and Aaron Rodgers. We have simply never seen this out of a backup quarterback. Or have we? Because right above Cooper Rush in QBR for the season is Geno Smith, who came in as the backup for Russell Wilson last year. But is Geno still a backup right now, or is he the starter at this point? But either way, he is playing absolutely out of his mind, and either way, we are going to have to go deeper into this and truly find out what makes a backup quarterback and what doesn't, and also compare Cooper Rush right now to the best backups of all time, and find out once and for all, using stats and data, who exactly is the best backup to ever play the game. We know that what Cooper Rush is doing is impressive. I mean, having the 5th best QBR in the league is no easy feat. According to this metric, he is performing up there with the best in the league. Last year, the 5th best QBR by the end of the season was none other than Patrick Mahomes. 6th was Josh Allen, and here are the rest of the top 5. As you can see, this specific metric for a quarterback does rank players pretty damn well, because these might just be objectively all of the top 6 quarterbacks last year right in order. So Cooper Rush is pretty good, and as I showed earlier, Geno Smith is also playing out of his mind right now. He is 4th in QBR in the season, and also 1st in quarterback rating in the entire league, and he's also leading the league in completion percentage, and he's 3rd in yards per attempt. I mean, it's absurd. Cooper Rush and Geno went from being absolutely nobodies just a little over a month ago, and now they're 2 of the premier quarterbacks in the league. But the big stat here is that Geno is in fact 2-3, because at the end of the day, it's night. No. Actually, at the end of the day, the NFL is about winning. And the Seattle Seahawks are in fact 2-3, and well, Cooper Rush is still undefeated, because he played 1 game last year and now 4 games this year, and his record is 5-0. The last player to start off their career 5-0 is, well, Patrick Mahomes, who started 5-0 in 2018 when he won the MVP with 5,000 yards and 50 touchdowns. The next quarterback to win his first 5 starts, it's good old Jimmy Garoppolo, who won his first 2 ever starts with the Patriots as the backup to Tom Brady, then went on to win his first 5 games in a row with the 49ers, totaling 7 straight wins as a starter to start off his career. He was the backup to Tom Brady, then won his first 7 games, then made it to the Super Bowl. So backup quarterbacks can be good, because now that I think of it, Patrick Mahomes also sat for an entire year behind Alex Smith before ever touching an NFL field. So all 3 of the last 3 players to start off their careers 5-0 all came from behind another quarterback. Johnny Manziel, Sam Darnold, Jamarcus Russell, Jameis Winston, Dwayne Haskins, and David Carr. What do all these names have in common? Well, each of these players all started in the NFL right away, and most of them, if not all of them, literally sucked. As Urban Meyer once said, the NFL is like playing Alabama every week, because every single player on your average NFL roster is one of, if not the best player from the college team that they came from. So going right from college to NFL without any sort of welcoming or warming up to the game speed or anything is extremely hard, and almost no one is insanely good right away. I mean, even Peyton Manning, who is easily a top 5 quarterback of all time, probably top 3 quarterback of all time, he started out horrible in his career, like worse than Trevor Lawrence did, because Peyton Manning in his rookie season went 3-13 and threw 26 touchdowns to 28 interceptions, and that can mostly be credited to the fact that he went right into the NFL without ever sitting. I mean, that is the 3rd most interceptions thrown in a single season since 1990, and first on this list, Jameis Winston, who was a part of this group here who started in the NFL right away. Because almost no one can make the jump to the NFL and immediately do well. Because as I said earlier, Garoppolo did well after backing up Tom Brady. Patrick Mahomes backed up Alex Smith for a year and then won MVP. But then, what no one remembers is that Lamar Jackson also sat for half a season and won MVP the next year. Comparing those players that sat first to someone like, Josh Allen, who only sat for 1 game and then was immediately thrown into the NFL, well, his rookie season, he threw 10 touchdowns to 12 interceptions in 15 games. I know he's one of the best right now, but going right from college to NFL, he was easily one of the worst quarterbacks in the league. I mean, the majority of all the top young stars in the league all didn't start right away, and almost all of the players that never sat played significantly worse. Players that get to play behind an older veteran makes them a better young player. How about Aaron Rodgers, who watched Brett Favre play for 3 whole years before finally starting the season in 2008? His touchdown to interception ratio was much better, 28-13. Then there's Drew Brees, who sat for a year on the Chargers, and he turned out pretty well and threw 16 touchdowns to 15 interceptions his rookie season. I mean, most of the time, it is just a much better idea to sit your rookie quarterback before playing him. And all of these players were backups at the time and are now some of the best in the league or some of the best ever. But the key words right there is that they were backups at the time, because this is a video about the backup quarterback, and yes, these players were all backups at one point in their career, but they definitely aren't now. So who's the best true backup of all time? Well, if we don't count all of these players that are obviously not backups, then is Cooper Rush the best backup of all time? To find this, we have to define what exactly constitutes as a backup, because all the young stars I just named and some of the all-time best quarterbacks ever, none of these players are actually backups. All those players sat behind a veteran for a year or more was the backup at the time, but if you take over the starting role for the team or you're intended to start all along, well, there goes your backup status. So to find the best backup performances of all time, let's say that to be a backup, there has to be a quarterback that is set to beat that team's starter for that year. Then, because of injury or bad performance by the starter, a guy comes in that was never supposed to come in and play. That's a backup. He's on the bench for one purpose and one purpose only: to play when the starter cannot suit up. So, Geno Smith isn't a true backup this year, but he was last year. And one of the better backups in recent memory is, of course, the inspiration for this video, Cooper Rush, who is a true backup. But is his 5-0 start to his career the best backup performance of all time? Well, let's see. There's been absolutely insane one-game backup wonders, like Chad Henne coming in for Patrick Mahomes against the Browns in the playoffs. He ended up picking up that one first down to win the game and send the Chiefs farther into the playoffs. And then there's a man with very nice teeth named Ryan Finley, who, when the Steelers started 11-0 and were a top 5 team in the league, filled in for Joe Burrow and put together a hell of a game to beat the Steelers. I mean, there's a lot of good single-game backup performances like that, and then there's Matt Flynn. Because on January 1st, 2012, Aaron Rodgers was out for one game, and this random nobody I've never heard of named Matt Flynn walked out onto the field to lead the Packers. And what he did next, well, only 25 players in NFL history have ever done. He put up 6 passing touchdowns in a single game. Only 25 players have ever done that, and he was a random backup and simply came in for a game and just did it. Not only that, but out of the 35 games in NFL history with 6 passing touchdowns, he threw for the 4th most yards out of all those games. 480 yards, 6 touchdowns. A nearly perfect performance from a backup. What's even crazier is that Big Ben, who threw for 522 and 6, the very next game of the season, threw for another 6 touchdowns.
It's caught on the run, and going into the end zone is Matt Spade. And that is 6 touchdown passes for Roethlisberger for the 2nd week in a row. It'll be 12 in 2 games. Yeah.
Only a few quarterbacks ever have thrown for multiple 6-touchdown games, and Big Ben did it in back-to-back weeks. But what's even crazier is that there have only been 7 players to put up 7 passing touchdowns in a single game, which is the record for most passing touchdowns in a game. And out of these 7 games, the best game out of all of them is easily this one right here. This one has the highest passer rating and highest completion percentage out of all the 7 touchdown games ever, with no interceptions. This is quite literally the best possible game ever, with an absolutely perfect passer rating with the coveted 158.3 rating on only 28 passing attempts. This game right here belongs to none other than Nick Foles, who was of course a backup quarterback. But not for this game though, because for this game he was actually the starter for the Eagles back in 2013 when he played the most perfect game possible. And then he got benched and then traded back to the Eagles, where he was still on the bench behind Carson Wentz, who in 2017 was having a great season, then got injured, and Nick Foles, who was the backup at the time, came in. Nick Foles played the last few games of the season and ended up beating Tom Brady in the Super Bowl. I mean, a backup winning the Super Bowl, that's gotta be the best backup performance of all time, right? Well, of course there's Tom Brady. He hasn't been a backup for over 20 years now, but that first season he played, he was the backup the entire year because Drew Bledsoe was the starter for that team, and the only reason Brady became the starter ever was because Drew Bledsoe got hurt. And when Tom Brady came in, he won the Super Bowl that exact year he came in for Bledsoe. So he was a genuine backup quarterback who came in early in the season and yes, had a very good team around him, but he won the Super Bowl as a backup just like Nick Foles. But unlike Foles, Brady was an absolute no-name that's never played in the NFL before. But we are just getting started with these insane performances, because then there's good old Earl Morrall, who you may have never heard of, but what you probably have heard of is the only undefeated team in NFL history, which is the 1972 Dolphins. The starting quarterback on that team was Bob Greasy, but when he got injured, Earl Morrall came in and won 9 straight games in the regular season, and he won AFC Player of the Year. And then he led them to the conference championship game where, in the Super Bowl, where Bob Greasy finally was healthy and he got put back in the game, and the Dolphins won the Super Bowl, of course. But the majority of that undefeated season, the only undefeated season of all time, it was Earl Morrall, the backup that you've never heard of, and the one that deserves the credit for one of the best seasons, if not the best season of all time. But that's not where the legend of Earl Morrall ends, because about 4 years earlier, he did almost the exact same thing. He was a true backup quarterback to the best quarterback in the league at the time, Johnny Unitas. Unitas got hurt, and once again, Earl came in and went 13-1 in the regular season, then won twice to get to the Super Bowl, but lost in the Super Bowl. But still, this man's Earl Morrall came in for all-time great quarterbacks 2 different times in a 4-year span and went 26-2, won AFC Player of the Year once, and made it to the Super Bowl both years. He is the epitome of what a great backup does. He comes in when the team needs him because the starter's out, and he just wins. But then there's Kurt Warner. This man Kurt Warner was bagging groceries in 1998 when he decided to try out for the St. Louis Rams practice squad. He ended up making the tryouts, and then he worked up the ranks and became the backup quarterback on the team. Just that alone, going from bagging groceries to becoming the backup quarterback, is enough to become a great story. But then, when the starter got hurt in the 3rd preseason game, Kurt Warner got put in. Then, as an undrafted backup quarterback, he went 13-3, won the MVP, won the Super Bowl, and won Super Bowl MVP. From then on, he went to 2 more Super Bowls and won another MVP, but those were years where he was the starter. But in 1999, he was genuinely a guy that just made the practice squad randomly, then went on and had one of the best quarterback seasons we have ever seen. 13-3, most valuable player, won the Super Bowl. I mean, there's literally nothing else you can ask for out of one player in a season. That is almost a perfect season from a guy that was bagging groceries before the season started. So yes, what Cooper Rush is doing right now is extremely impressive. 5-0 is nothing to just sweep under the rug and forget, but when talking about the history of the backup quarterback, he pales in comparison to the all-time great backup quarterbacks that went from nobodies to playing an all-time great game or winning Super Bowls and Most Valuable Player awards. Of course, Cooper Rush's story isn't quite over yet, but for now, he hasn't made it up there the all-time ranks. Here's the last 5 MVPs. Every single one of these players backed up behind a veteran quarterback for a while before starting a game. So something can be said for being the backup. Everyone wants to start, but some of the best players ever stayed behind a bit to learn first before touching the field. So next time you see the starting quarterback go down on a team, and you see that backup guy that you've never heard of just jog out onto the field, and you think, well, there goes that team's season. Well, think of all these players here that changed the course of football history all because they got that one chance. And remember, never underestimate the underdog.